The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hotline. My name is Roger Sturiawe, and today I have the privilege to serve you in this capacity as the moderator of this discussion. Now, you're probably used to the common face of Comrade Abdelatif, but for some health reasons, he's not able to be here today with us, and so I am going to be driving this discussion in his place, but we are going to have the same discussions and the quality just as much as we always have had. Now, my name again is Roger Sturiawe. Today is the 25th day of September of the year 2022. Just to reiterate some of the few things that have been happening here and there, and also to remind you that Ebola is spreading in the country, so please be alert. Make sure you take precautions that you need, necessary precautions at that. Make sure that you're safe, your loved ones are also protected, they are safe, because the spread of this disease is actually alarming. And it's a nasty disease, really. It's something you don't want to experience with someone you love. Now, today, we are going to look at a discussion that is regional. It's not just a Ugandan based, it is regional. We're going to look at the East African integration. We want to look at where I have a member, or an aspiring member, who I think, call honorable, because in a few hours, I think about 48 hours, he'll be honorable, he says. And he's going to be, taking us through, first of all, how does he see the East African community as a whole? Are we in a place that we should be? It has literally existed for quite some time, but we don't seem to reach the promised land. We want to see how much we have come, how far can we go, and what do we need to be able to get there. And also, as an individual who spotted, he probably has points. He said he probably has loopholes he might have spotted to say that, look, I think I'm in position to provide this and that services to the country of Uganda in representation in the ELA. Now, I also will be joined with time another gentleman who is Dickens Kamucha, is an ED for Africa Institute for Energy Governance. Now, we're going to, a part of the discussion is also going to look at this trending whole discussion of ECOP, because it also touches about East Africa. It's about Uganda, it's about Tanzania, and so since it's an issue of the region itself, we also will get his point on that issue and a few of others. But without any waste of time, I'm going to invite him to say hello. Tell us a little bit of who he is and who will get in. Good evening, sir.
All right, good evening. Thank you so much for choosing to have me just 48 hours to the election of ELA.
48 hours to your honorable-ship.
Yes. Many members have, if your viewers do remember, I was here about a fortnight or so,
yes,
2 fortnights ago, and we discussed EL as well. I'm very privileged that your ED has promised to bring me back, and it's not just bringing me back, but pushing the youth agenda, because I believe youth in politics is one of the gaps that this nation has, and having them in parliament alone, the 5 slots, is not enough, but putting them on the table for discussion is quite crucial. Like the gentleman in 1986 sacrificed themselves to go to the bush and surrender this country to freedom, which they said then. I'm also surrendering myself to go to Yala, to represent this country in a capacity where many youth have put their tails in the back and opted to go for the national politics and not the regional politics. I believe we are a few of us who can tussle it out with these guys who have the monies, who have made it in life, who are splashing dollars to make sure they go to this parliament. And this is the time for us to have to go to this parliament and challenge some of the policies. We want to legislate for better policies for our people here, the traders, the academicians, and all the business people in this world who want to invest in East Africa. And as a block of ESC, we want to know that the policies that are here are favoring our people. When you go to ESC, specifically its organ for ELA, you've not just gone to attend to a session. You go to lobby for your country. It's literally a diplomatic deployment. You don't just go to sit and take coffee and come back. You actually have to be a serious person going to discuss issues of national importance, but on a regional level. I've studied international relations and diplomacy. I'm on my master's. I majored in ESC. I did a paper on ESC. So I believe there is time for us to be given a chance to go and lobby for this country, the best for itself. And the Bagandas have a saying that I'm one of the people who believe that this is a time for us to go and lobby for this country. This country has suffered diplomatic injuries, and not only in politics, but even in social services, even in economics. It has suffered a lot of diplomatic injuries. And I believe that this is the time for us to go and heal it, because many people have gone to this parliament and they have spoken English in the law format, and many Ugandans don't even understand their English.
Yeah, they don't.
But this is the time for us to go and simplify things and domesticate this ESC, domesticate EL activity, so that the person on ground can know that you don't need a passport to cross over to Rwanda. You only need a national ID.
They just go around.
Even if you want to fly, you only need a national ID to fly. I mean, these are the things people do not know. If you went out here and asked an border guy that, do you know about ELA? They'll probably tell you no.
Yeah.
Because the people who are there have taken it to be something which is for the elites. This is not an elite activity.
And because it's literally how it has been played over time.
Thank you.
Now I want to understand, to begin with, what inspired you as an individual? One, you're a young person, I would say that. But two, also given the whole business of the East African community politics, it's an area that is quite new, yes? And so I don't know if a lot of people have really understood the dynamics of the politics of the region. What inspired you to run for this?
Let me give you a correction. ELA is not new. This is an
it
sounds new.
I think what has delayed is the success, but it
Probably.
has been there for some time.
Yes, but it's a block which has been here. It's an arm of a block which has been here for quite some time.
Yes.
And many Ugandans should appreciate that the people who have been there, yes, they've done what they've presumed they've done. But we needed a lot of pushing for our traders here to understand. Because if you go to Kenya, let me give an example of this country. We have Equity Bank. Equity Bank is coming from Kenya.
Yes.
Its slogan is Karibu member. If you go to DR Congo, there is Equity Bank. Many banks, KCB is here. KCB is a Kenyan bank.
Yes, it is.
If you look at all other banks that are here, internationally owned, and they are here, why don't we have another bank set up in Kenya as Uganda?
That's a good question.
Why don't we have Aga Khan here as Ugandans for medical services? Why don't we have Kenyatta University here?
Why don't we have Makerere in Kenya?
Why don't we have Makerere in Kenya? A very huge university.
The oldest at that.
But I believe that this is going to be a chance for Uganda to have legislation based on quality. We've had legislation based on party and ring fencing, blah, 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 and we've given people a chance to just go and finish 5 years. Are we giving them a chance to go and deliver quality legislation? Or we're giving them a chance to go and complete their 5 years? That's a question we should ask the electorates. We want to have people go and legislate for the betterment of this country.
Yes.
Whoever that you will choose must have the qualities to go and legislate for this country and lobby more. Let me tell you something. If we had, because we have the East African Development Bank, the EADB, why don't we have the East African Standards, Bureau of Standards, to make sure that our milk, our meat, our eggs, our maize is not forbidden in Kenya?
In Kenya, yes.
Because this entity would be making sure that it is an East African body that is going to measure all the qualities that are supposed to enter in the ESC block, not to find it as a surprise that Ugandan products are no longer going to Kenya and are now blocked from entering Kenyan borders. If we have the East African Bureau of Standards, it will be making sure that everything that goes through Kenya, that goes through Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Congo, South Sudan, are all of quality. Let me tell you something. If we had the East African industries, per se, why would we not have a block market for these goods? Uganda produces a lot of cement.
But I think those are, if I'm not mistaken, 4 of the main areas of the EAC are in the common market, the customs, and political integration and business. So that why has that not worked for the time being? That now we need to put more effort. What is it that is delaying it anyway?
What is delaying it is the legislation.
Do we not have legislation?
We could have a discussion, but people to bring out a policy, because EAC believes in policies, and these policies must be adopted by the Council of Ministers, which is the highest body, and also the summit. Because this summit is supposed to pass these policies well established and well executed. If a policy is not well executed from the assembly, then the summit cannot pass it. I can tell you, like the 4 arms you've mentioned, very well structured. There needed to be a discussion on how to better EAC using those 4 arms. those 4 policies.
Yes.
And if the discussion is not surrounding any of those, because each one of them has sub-policies, where we must hold very attentive discussions. Let me give you an example. The Common Market Protocol. Why would Uganda or Kenya or Tanzania put a lot of levy on goods that are crossing to Kenya?
The non-tariffs and all that.
Non-tariffs and everything. Uganda has about 125 barriers. And in this financial year, the EAC says they're going to cut them to 25. 100 of them want to be slashed. Do you know how much that is? That's a lot of money, even if it's $1. That's about $100
That's too much money.
That's too much money. So I believe that there needs to be a lot of legislation put forward. But that legislation is not going to come out of the blue. People that are going to be sent there need to be mentored. And this is not just a game of politics. It's a game of diplomatic deployments. Are people understanding the economic impression when we go there? I hear people say, yes, the people who are going to Iela must represent regions in Uganda. We must have Eastern 3, 2 from Western, Northern, Central. That is rubbish.
So yours is not a question of
It's
of
not a
region,
question of regional balance. No. This is a deployment where we're supposed to earn.
As a country.
As a country. Let's not subject it to regions here. Let's not subject it to tribes here.
But that has also been known commonly for bringing imbalances because...
Yes, and that has made us lose out. Let me tell you something. An example is going to be clear. Once you're voting for a president, and they say Northern Uganda did not vote for the president, and Eastern Uganda voted for the president, and Central did not, what could happen?
Yes, it's very likely that one region that voted for him might get some more services than what they did not. Because
he will appreciate them more. Here in Iela, that is for the national politics. In Iela is actually when you cross the country and you go to the Iela, you never even mention about the NRM, not even the DP or the FDC.
You cannot.
You say, I am Honorable Julius Bukyana from Uganda. You never mention your home politics. So you're representing a country. Whatever region that you come from, if somebody is capable, let them be given the chance.
Yes.
Let them be given, because it is the MPs that vote. They have a chance because this parliament has 529 MPs. They must vote for the people they know who are capable.
The 300 of whom come from the ruling party. But before you go so far, I want to also invite my other panelist, Dickens Kamugisha, who is going to be joining in from online. He's going to be telling us his position in this whole EAC as it stands. He's an expert in the energy governance, and those are some of the issues that we need to really pay much attention if the region as a whole is going to grow, but also as a country, as one, as Uganda, we need to grow. Mr. Kamugisha, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Dickens Kamugisha, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Africa Institute for Energy Governance. A few ago, we work on the energy governance and policy to ensure that energy projects contribute to social, economic, environmental development.
Okay, you're welcome, Kamugisha. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you're joining us from. This is the Hotline Show. My name is Roger Studiawe, and I'm here with Honorable, I think it's in order now, to call him Honorable Bukyana Julius. And we are trying to understand, really unpack this whole business of East African communities as it stands. Now, Mr. Kamugisha, Mr. Bukyana, before we go to the whole EAC and the regulations and implementation and all that business, I want to understand how many chances do you stand in winning this whole seat? Because we've seen the ruling government, ruling party, I think it's better put that way, ring-fencing 6 of its members for the positions of Iela and leaving only 3 for all the other parties, including the independent. How many chances do you stand for this?
Before the show started, I gave you a brief of Chama Cha Mapinduzi.
Yes.
They've sent 8 members of Chama Cha Mapinduzi, CCM, and only 1 opposition, because they have 99% of the members in the parliament. I want to tell you this. It's practically unfair for you to have a lion's share both in government implementation, because if you literally went to all government MDAs, 90% of them are NRM people.
Yes, yeah.
And then you come into politics as well, which is the basis of this country. And then you have more of your members representing this country outside the country. There is a petition that the Leader of Opposition put forward to the Speaker of Parliament, asking for all shades of opposition to be included into the ELA election, having all opposition parties, at least 80% of them, be represented, so that you have FDC, you have DP, all that have representation in Parliament. You have DP, you have FDC, you have UPC, you have GEMA.
Yes. And PPP has one member.
And PPP has one member. So you leave out these that have one member, because they cannot have another representation.
Yeah, they cannot have here and there.
You cannot appear twice.
Yes.
So you take FDC, you have NUP, you have UPC, you have
DP and
DP.
GEMA.
GEMA cannot, because it also has
Oh,
one
GEMA
member.
also has one, yes.
So you have these four have one position in ELA. And you have the NRM as well, take 4, and then you have 1 for independent. That could work extremely very well, because you've given all people all shades of opinion to go and relay for this country. But because there is a lot of political maturity that we see in the president of this country, he uses numbers like he uses anything. And because God has blessed him with the numbers in Parliament, he wants to use them for anything. Passing a law, passing a policy, passing every other thing that comes across in this legislation. So I believe even in ELA, he will use the numbers. He has used the numbers before. So
because he literally already has.
Yes, he usually has the numbers. So because 326 MPs against about 100 and something opposition, and then 100 and something for the independents, you believe that, and some independents are NRM leaning.
Yeah, most of them,
yes.
in fact.
So you believe that it is automatic. But this time around, there is something that caught my eye. When 6 decided to surround or to circle the 6 members and never gave the NRM Parliamentary Caucus to have a jurisdiction about these members, people became angry.
Of the NRM itself?
Yes, in Parliament. I can tell you that many are opting to drop 3 from the 6.
And reserve 3.
And take out 3 to the independents. And on 29th, just ask for life. I'm also asking for life to reach that day. That you're going to get a shocker. That NRM might send 83 or 4 members. Because the MPs are really angry that they were deprived of their choice. It's like your dad coming to tell you, you know what, this is the shirt you're going to put on. But you see it's really ugly. And you don't have any option. But it tells you this is, yes, this is my order.
You
not, must.
There's
so
no
what he does,
yeah.
So what he does, I'm going to speak in parables. What he does is going to tell you know what, okay, you don't want it, okay, put on this shirt. After putting it on, I'm going to buy you a sweet. Or I'm going to buy you an iPhone 14. There's
an incentive to the shirt.
So you look at the shirt, you look at iPhone 14, you both need the shirt, so you will put it on. And then he'll give you the iPhone 14. You really look unsmart, but you want the phone. That's what the NRM MPs have done.
Benefits.
That's what they have done to them. They really do not want to vote for the 6, but there's something they have received through these caucuses. And that something is money.
But also NRM has been known for it's not common, it's uncommon for an NRM member to go against what the principle of
it's
the party
uncommon.
has said. It's uncommon.
But the breed of MPs that we're having in Parliament right now are no joker.
Are they different? Most of them are the same faces that have been compromised time and again.
60% of the NRM MPs failed. They are new. 60% of the NRM MPs in the last election failed. They are new MPs. Actually, the 11th Parliament has almost 80% of the members of Parliament brand new. If you get to NUP, I mean, you understand what I'm talking about.
Yes,
so these are a breed of MPs who now want to have personal and individual merit.
Yes.
They want to vote for people they feel are capable. And thank to God that we've preached the gospel of integrity. We've told them 500,000, 700,000 is not big enough for a candidate to be chosen. Don't mortgage, don't do procurement in Parliament. Because this house is taken to be as a house of integrity. What will I equal you if I went to the constituency and they're asking the same? I would say that Parliament is a house of deals. I will not respect it anymore. So this is a time where we tell them, you know what, vote for capability. Vote for the person who is going to represent this country in all capacities. And we are a few of us who can tell them. Others are coiling off because they want votes. And I believe come 29th, they will hear our hardness, they will hear our bitter truth, and they will vote for us.
29th is like about 2 days from now.
2 days from now, 48 hours.
Okay, we wish you very good luck. I hope that the next time we have you here, we'll have Honorable Julius Bukyana. But
Absolutely.
it also, I want to hope that, well, I'm going to ask for you to first lay down for us what exactly are the points that you're going to, because for the most people, some people would think that if someone feels like you should be standing for the EAC, they have a position that maybe my whole point is going to be in the direction of the common markets, because we probably have a lot of goods that don't have markets, and we have, you know, those barriers and tariffs. And so I hope that when I go, I'm going to change that. So we want to understand, what is your manifesto like? What is it that you want to bring that has not been there? What is the different way that you want things done that has not been the common practice? But before you go there, I want to get the other gentleman, my other panelist, Mr. Kamugisha, to pick his thoughts on this whole ESC and the politics. Because it seems, as he is an expert in governance, in energy governance, I want to also understand that he appreciates politics of the region, and also understand that as he is in the governance space, everything literally is run by the political will and the waves of politics. So I want to first pick your position, sir. What do you think about this whole East African community, the whole integration process, the whole, you know, politics, economics? What is your position, sir?
Thank you very much. Of course, I believe that even, and good evening, the Honorable to be in the studios. I believe that anyone who is talking about East Africa, we are talking about how best we can ensure that the East African community becomes something useful for the people of this region. Yes, at the country level and at the regional level, people can talk about interests and everything, but at the end of the day, people will care about whether the community is going to create opportunities for families to be able to take their children to the best schools, for families to get the best health care services, for families to move forward. I think that is the most important message that people would want to hear. And for these things to happen, there are fundamentals that must be followed or done. The first thing is to ensure that we have the right institutions, because you've been seeing many of the countries in East Africa actually quarreling over taxes, people not respecting each other's rules and even the community rules. You see, even within the countries, the political parties cannot agree on how they need to be represented. So meaning that even to the people who are going to the East African Parliament, they are going there as just a single party, when in actual sense we need to go there as a country and ensure that we push the policies that benefit the entire country, not just a mere party. There are also areas where you find, for example, the environmental issues, as is almost share the Lake Victoria, for example, and many other political resources. Now you have DRC. We would believe that the East African community should be used as a tool to ensure that those environmental resources are conserved and used for the benefit of all the people of East Africa. Those are some of the areas I believe that, you know, whether you go to the East African Parliament, whether you are within the countries of East Africa, we have to work together to ensure that we push for those policies that create maximum benefits for the people. And I believe that anyone who can show capability to push for those policies that are beneficial to the East African people should be the best person to go. And those policies should be the ones to be fronted by any of our representatives. Thank you.
Okay. Now, before you go, Mr. Dickens, I want to understand, what do you think we have learned from the past, you know, mistakes? Because East African community, like I said earlier, It's not something that just began, it's not a new bloc that is being established. It has been there for, I think, since the first was established in 1967 or so. So it's been here for quite some time, but we have not registered success over time. What faith do you think we should have in the fact that this is going to succeed in this period? And it's going to work for us as a country, but also as a region?
Of course, it is a big, big challenge. Some of us were born when the former East African community had already collapsed. And we've been reading about why the community collapsed. We've been reading about the differences in the level of development within the countries of East Africa. And it is when you read even the conditions today, some of those problems still exist. The differences in development, the differences within the countries themselves that are members of East African community still cause a lot of problems. You go, for example, to a country like Tanzania today, if you are Ugandan, they will be asking, what are you coming here to do? How many days are you going to be here? You'll go to other countries, whether South Sudan, whether DRC that has just joined, they will be asking for visa fees. You've been seeing Kenya almost banning some of our exports. And you understand, because at the end of the day, you find countries, poor countries like ours, need taxes. So when you go to the East African community as a region, there are things, either you have some skills and some resources to sell in the market. If you don't have those ones, you are likely to be swallowed. So somehow you'll start protecting your smaller things and miss the bigger picture. And that is still the challenge that we are facing. But we are hoping with now the modern technology, communication, and the connectivity, we can actually, as countries, if they really want and with the good leadership, they can overcome of those obstacles. But it must be deliberate that those obstacles must be overcome. Otherwise, you'll be seeing countries, even within the same community, really compete each other. I give you an example for example, the electricity sector. Right, the African Development Bank and World Bank are supporting the East African Power Pool, where they want to build the interconnectivity of electricity to make sure that you can buy electricity anywhere in East Africa. And you can imagine if you don't ensure that your projects, your electricity is competitive within your country, and other countries are allowed to export power within your borders, and yet you have wanted to build that infrastructure, it means your electricity is going to become redundant. And you will see that even when you have a community, some countries will still be trying to protect their industries. And that's what was causing problems. Secondly, you also have issues of political challenges, because the level of democracy within the community is going to be critical. Some people in the countries in East Africa, if they see that the other countries are not well governed, they want to protect their smaller democracy and shield it from the country that is not doing it well. If they say institutions like the judiciary, the courts are not doing the right things, they will want to protect themselves from the vices that are happening within your country. So those are some of the challenges that we still see today, and it is going to take a deliberate step by the leaders and mobilizing the citizens to ensure that we overcome those challenges for us to build a strong community in which people can be proud, in which people see that actually there are benefits, but rather than the facing problems that they are going to miss, they are going to lose because of the opening the borders. They should look at those borderless countries as an opportunity. And for this to happen, we must educate, we must sensitize the citizens. I still believe that there are many, many citizens within East Africa that do not understand what the East African community is about. And you are not going to build a good regional body we having the citizens appreciating, understanding what that regional body is about. We must deliberately and with all the means that we have as states or members, as institutions, as leaders, mobilize the citizens to be able to understand and to support the developments of the region.
Okay, thank you so much. I also note the fact that you mentioned leadership, good leadership, and that has been a question of the region. Now you'll see that some of the countries, actually most of the countries, we have literally different laws on different issues, especially in the 4 blocks that we are looking at. Even when we look at the economic standpoint, the common market thing, literally every country has their kind of approach that they approach these things. How do you think it is easy to marry all these standards for each of the states to make sure that the one voice is coming out and that the region as a whole benefits? Because like you said, every one of the countries wants to protect their interests in the region. And so if Uganda is benefiting from something, it wants to protect it because that is what is giving us the taxes and something like that. So at the end of the day, if there's some, Kenya is going to find a way of entering into our taxes and reducing that. Economically, we feel like we might be losing out. What do you think we can do in that position?
I still believe that because whether you go to ECOWAS, you go to even the EU itself, countries are not at the same level of development, but the region has been actually pushing and pulling those countries to move forward, to have some, to ensure that where they have an advantage, actually they can do better and be able to put something on the market. But all these things can only happen if we ensure that we have the right leadership. Because the right leadership actually make people or give people confidence and trust that it is not about saying your market is going to be taken, what? No. It is about ensuring that you can work together, learn from each other, support each other to be able to move forward. And I believe once the people trust and have confidence in the leadership, it is possible to overcome some of these obstacles. And unfortunately, I think most of the East African countries are still struggling, even internally, even at the national level. You don't see that actually there is clear mobilization, there is clear strategy of how to overcome some of the obstacles. The governance question, whether it is rule of law, whether it is constitutionalism, we still have challenges in many of the countries. Whether institutions, whether they are institutions like supposed to guarantee justice, institutions supposed to guarantee human rights, institutions supposed to guarantee environmental conservation, we still have many challenges in those areas. So when you have those challenges at the national level, you'll find it very difficult to take any of those principles regional body. So what is it that we need to do? I think internally as member states, we must ensure that we organize ourselves. If you are DRC and you have all those challenges, some of the challenges can be addressed when you join the other members because you'll be able to learn from them. But some of the issues you must address them as a country. If you are South Sudan, you must address some of the things internally before you take your confusion to the regional body. So those are some of the, if you are Uganda, which is peaceful today, you wonder why, for example, the political parties cannot sit together and say, please, whether you have bigger numbers or smaller numbers, let's spread those guns here at the national level. But when we go to the regional body, we need to present ourselves as Uganda. It doesn't matter whether you are men or what. Let's present ourselves as Ugandans. But if you create injustice within your own country, I can assure you whoever will go to the body will be saying, now, let me see what I can do as a small party, as a small individual, and you lose the bigger picture. So those are some of the things that you'll find the best leadership can actually mobilize the citizens, mobilize the institutions to be able to deliver and to be able to mobilize each and everyone out there to support the needs, support the tools that we have as the states, member states, and as a region, we need the right leadership. How you can get the right leadership? I believe some of our countries have leaders that have been around for a long time. Maybe those ones, we can assume that they have experiences, but at the same time, those same leaders must understand that it is important to build a culture of democracy. And democracy demands that you must follow the rules. You must avoid changing rules every time when you find it to affect you. The moment you do that, you are telling even people behind you and the neighbors that actually the rules do not matter. The rules don't care about the rules. And there is no any country or region that can develop without following the rules.
Thank you so much for your views, Mr. Dickens Kamisha, and thank you for those insights. Now, Mr. Honorable, I decided to call you Honorable because you're going to be in 48 hours. Honorable, I want to understand what your manifesto is like for someone out there, even if you have the MPs who are going to be voting for you. But I understand that literally the representation is not just for the MPs that are voting for you, but for Uganda as a whole. And so when you go to that assembly, it is for the issues of Ugandans deep down in Karamoja or Kisoro somewhere that are going to benefit from what you're going to be lobbying from the ELA. What are your positions? What are your major points for going to ELA as an MP?
Thank you. There is need for us to understand that ELA has a huge impact on this nation, not only as Uganda but as a bloc. Yes. Because if you go to Kenya, they will tell you that yes, ELA is here, but this is what we've gained from it. There is a vision to have a single currency in East Africa.
Yes.
I really want to advocate for this very, very single currency. The East African Monetary Institute is going to be set up here. Members were sent here to come and do survey on whether Uganda is suitably supposed to host this institute. And when they came, they had a lot of questioning and ABCD, and somehow the recommendations were Uganda cannot host the East African Monetary Institute, which I saw the Minister for East African Affairs, Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, came out and said, no, we need to have an evaluation of that report because we cannot fail to host the East African Monetary Union. Yet we have more of the continental organs here, so we can ably do the job. But I believe that the strength that she uses to fight for this country is extremely adorable. But most importantly, we want to understand the security of this region. DR Congo had an attack of M23, and yes, the region was silent.
I saw, was it today or yesterday that the Kenya also sent their troops?
Yeah, they did. Congo. But you remember very well that, yes, the summit sat and they appointed Kenya to be the hosting body for the East African Standby Force. The East African Standby Force has been in paper for quite some time. Kenya sending troops to Congo, it was after the ESC Secretariat went to Congo to ascertain whether they are ready to receive the forces. Because it's not all about sending the forces and that's all. The operationalization of the forces needs to come in when there is a lot of ground set for them. Yes. Their salaries, their safety, their starting point, their fighting points and everything. But if Kenya only sent their troops, the memorandum was like, they need to have all troops from all member states. They come together, train them, have one block, then send for any country which has instabilities. Today we have not seen the operationalization of this ESC force. We have not seen it. Yes. And if you look at Congo, Congo has almost 100 rebel groups. And no president of Congo has ruled Congo border to border.
The region, the ruling region.
The country itself. No president of Congo has ruled Congo border to border. So I believe there is need to stabilize the region. Because Somalia wants to join the bloc.
And look at where Somalia is.
And look at where Somalia is. Today, Ethiopia, which is next to Somalia, is having the Tigray fighting day and night. Yeah. And they're accusing Uganda for training the forces of Tigray. Congo is accusing Rwanda for hosting the M23. Yes. And Uganda for giving them mercenaries. I mean, weapons for fighting.
And so those are all members of the ESC.
And all these are members for the ESC. I mean, it's a lot of hula baloo, like one of the MPs calls it. But we need to have an integration which is based on facts. Let's not have an integration which is based on paper. Uganda needs, because if you come up and call the president of this nation the leader of the region, he is the leader of the
Father,
region.
actually, of
A
the
father of
region.
the region, actually. And if you're seeing members, because if your neighbor is not safe, you're not safe.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
If your neighbor receives thieves, you're the next.
And today is me, tomorrow
Yes,
is
tomorrow
you.
is you.
Yes.
So we need to stabilize the region and make sure that we are operating in a region which is safe. That's the first. Secondly, these guys, the presidents of all these nations, sorry to call them guys, His Excellencies, have made sure the political integration is very awesome. When you look at the summit, when Kenyatta is chairing that summit, and now they give it to Ndayishimiye of Burundi, you will see a summit which is having a lot of visions. You see Ndayishimiye right there of Burundi, you see Kenyatta, you see Suluhu, you see Museveni, you see Kagame, you see Salva Kiir, you will see an East Africa which is shining tomorrow. Let them leave that table. Everything remains on paper. You travel to Tanzania, they will tell you need a passport. The integration.
You have your...
Rwanda will cross the border.
Yes.
The integration. People will be killed in South Sudan. Traders of Uganda will be killed in South Sudan. Hand robbed, gunned down.
And we will all be silent about it.
We'll all be silent about it. So I believe that the economic integration could be shining, but the economic integration still has failed to kick off. The tariffs that are putting on products from various countries, the traders, the environment, the way traders are operating is quite alarming. So I believe my manifesto will charge so much on the East African economic integration. I believe security.
That is in line with the common market protocol.
Common market protocol, because I want to break them.
Okay.
My agenda is broken into all those. I want to believe security is very key.
It's very powerful.
Because the man right here is very, very obsessed with security and the regional security as well. So I believe security is going to be my other. And then, of course, if we have the protocols favoring our people, then we are good to go. We are very good to go. But the legislation is going to be on things that are really tangible for our people. I don't want to break all my manifesto here because I know people are watching.
Yes. What should be done differently? I want to understand that literally all we have said, sometimes, okay, not all, but most of the other members have said, look, I'm going here because we have a problem with the common market protocol, because probably our goods don't have market and all that. And the father of the region, when he was at the inauguration of William Ruto, he said, President William Ruto, he also reiterated the same, that we need to create our own market at home before we get out there, citing the President Nixon of the USA. But I feel like there has been, like you mentioned, of the heads of states of East Africa, there's too much in the paper. There's too much in the promises. There's just a lot of sweet nothings. Yes? How do we put it to implementation? Because at the end of the day, what matters is not just what do we say, what do we wish for. How do we put it in practice? How are we going to do that? With your good manifesto, how are you going to do that?
All right. Like you see the Parliament of Uganda, an MP will have an idea, will pitch it to the parliamentary technocrats. They will put it on paper, they will train him what he wants to do and what will be achieved out of that.
Yes.
It's the same way that ELA operates. There's an order paper as well, where the speaker is, and the technocrats at the assembly receive these ideas and say, is it in tandem with our objective?
Yes.
If it is yes, then it is put on paper. It is discussed with the analysts right there. And if it's going to have a positive effect, it will be discussed on the floor of the assembly. And these are things that are supposed to be helped to grow. Let me tell you something. I've seen policies, I've read about policies which have been passed in the assembly, which have resulted and impacted East Africa. Where the common passport, the East African passport came from, it was a discussion on the floor of the assembly. And today Kenya has adopted, Rwanda adopted, Burundi adopted, South Sudan adopted. Actually, South Sudan is adopting now. Tanzania did not adopt. That's why you use your own passport to go to Tanzania. But Tanzania doesn't have the East African passport.
Oh, they have their very own national
They have their
passports.
very own, yes. But it's also going to be adopted soon because it's just a paper of signing. You just assent to that. But I want to tell you this. It was a discussion on the floor of the assembly. We need to create spaces for the assemblies to have these discussions. And it depends on the leaders you send there. Are they able to sit down and craft a discussion on such policies? Because if they just go and adopt policies which were discussed in the last assemblies, then we are starting from zero.
Which usually happens, by the way, most of the time.
Do even Ugandans know that discussions are being held? Nothing. So there needs to be a communication between the mother parliament and the assembly. Because there could be a policy where the mother parliament is discussing and could be an input to the assembly, and it comes to the regional policy. Let me give you an example. The Reproductive Health and Rights Bill that is being discussed in Yela right now had an element of homosexuality. But the people who were discussing it, because it was a private member's bill that was brought in the assembly. And that member left because the president of Rwanda did not appoint him again. So it was left on the floor.
Left hanging,
on the
yes.
floor. A member from South Sudan came and adopted it. It is being in discussion right now. But once it was scrutinized very well, people realized that it had an element of homosexuality. And passing a bill in East Africa means it's going to be effected in all the member states.
Yes.
Yes.
And now my question is, let's say Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania does not assent to that bill. And then Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan or Somalia, if it joins, they adopt.
The consensus is 7 members. Once 5 say no and 2 say yes, it's uneven. It is dropped.
Yeah.
Once, yes, there are 7 member states. So if 4 say yes and 3 say no, of course it is evident that the 4 have won. But if the 4 is 4 yes, if the 4 say yes and the 3 say no, it is also evident that you've lost. So the member states said no to this bill. But they told them, you did not to say no here. Take it to your mother parliaments. Let them discuss it. Meet CSOs. Let them discuss about this bill. Come up with resolutions, then bring them to us. We met members from Iala, George Odong, Musamali, Kakoza, Rosa Cole, and all this. They discussed with us. We gave them our resolutions. They met CSOs. It was taken back. We are yet to receive a report about what happened in the bill, whether it was dropped or not. Burundi dropped, Rwanda dropped, Kenya dropped. I think you saw recently,
yes.
Actually yesterday, Kenya's put a ban on all gay content on TV. Yesterday. It is in regard and tandem for that bill. So I believe that the discussions put on the assembly are just key for us to understand that we need to have a discussion, but it also draws back to the people that have the content to discuss these bills.
So I'm curious, so if let's say 4 of them assent and 3 decline, does it only take effect in the 4 countries that have assented?
No. This is the block.
Does it take general effect?
It takes general effect.
But now the problem is now the country has won because, okay, we have a block as a region, but each of the countries has what they call the state sovereignty, so they decide what they want to do. Now I want to understand the perspective of the state sovereignty vis-a-vis the region one, because at the end of the day, if you're a part of the region, it means you're literally adopting to everything.
Let me tell you something.
So how does that work together?
You very well know that the EU has policies which apply in every member state for EU. It's only the Britain recently which pulled out from the EU, but they're still using some of the policies.
Yes.
I can assure you, if a bloc passes a policy, it is effected in all the member states.
Irrespective of
your choice. That's why they even a president of a certain country will call the other and say, please don't say yes. Tell your people not to say yes to that bill. Because it can affect each country which says no. And some member states are paid by funders. You may find that a member state is paid huge sums of money for that bill. I'm told the member of South Sudan who is handling this private member's bill is one of the richest ELA members of parliament because of this bill. So it's not a joker. People are earning big through these bills, but they have hidden agendas. Imagine, in this bill, which I read, you don't have authority over your children and what they do. You only guide them. That's what the bill says.
So your role is literally supervisory.
Supervise. And since when did the African a parent just starts to supervise and not advise? So it is a bill which is, it calls for halls, shells of residences. If a child does not feel like sleeping in your house, can go in a shell of residence. Is it safe? And you don't have anything to say about them. They have the right. So I believe that we need to send credible people. I will stick to that. We need to send credible people who are going to understand these bills. If a member of parliament has failed, because we have political failures in this race, they failed at just the district level. They failed to be given a vote at the district level, and they want to go and represent the country.
In a regional level.
If the district failed to appreciate your efforts, now you want to represent a country. Very absurd. Very absurd.
And very unlikely some of them actually do go through.
Because they use a lot of money.
And not just money, because of that whole politics of representation of the parties, this and that. So if someone is, for example, an independent who is NRM leaning or something like that, they stand some more chance to actually go than someone who is standing on their own political will. But generally, to cut across, with the challenges that we have faced, we have, as a country, we have issues with the economics, we have had issues with Kenya over issues of also the market and all that stuff. And most of these issues have not really been resolved over time. And some of them are questions of state itself as one. And now sometimes when something is not in the best interest of a country, they tend to pull back. What is the implementation mechanism of what is decided at the EAC?
Repeat that question.
When the whole assembly, let's say it decides, makes a decision on a particular issue, but some member countries are not really, don't feel that is in their best interest. Usually they pull through, and obviously that affects the whole region as a whole. Is there a particular implementation strategy or mechanism for what is decided in this EAC?
There are major reports and the minority reports. It's basically in the mother parliaments where I've seen this, that a committee which is involving the ruling party members of parliament and the opposition. And if you're not satisfied with the recommendations of the committee, there ought to be a minority report. I remember very well in the ruling for the Supreme Court for the presidential election petition, Justice Chisache came out and had a minority report. She had consequences because even her file was stolen, blah, blah, blah. In many countries, minority reports are taken to be defensive because they bring out the truth. They bring out the real evidence, you know? The same to IALA. There is need. You can have a minority report for the countries that feel this policy is not favoring us. You can do a minority report, which can be adopted by the House. It's no offender. But I can believe that when you go there, it is lobbying for your country, so you lobby the best. That's why you see that many countries in EU decide to use the pound. Others decide to use the dollar. I think I'm correct about that.
Yes, you're correct.
So it is quite a complex issue, but the representation right there matters a lot. The representation matters a lot, and many Ugandans who are watching us right now should know that when you go to IALA as a member state, there ought to be a discussion with other member states because you need to copy from them and implement right in your country. And that rotation of the assembly visiting member states is also quite important for me. And I believe that the discussion is all about lobbying, is all about getting in touch with member states and know what they do better so that you can have here the common market for the goods which are in excess and everything. So I believe that, yes, if we have all those people who we feel that can represent this country in a very, very, very better position, we can have the very best of IALA from 2022 to 2027. And if their term still exceeds and they want to have another term of 5 years, because IALA is 10 years, they can be given a chance after delivering, because we need to see tangible results on ground for the 5 years.
Okay. Thank you so much. That is Honorable Julius Bukyana for you. We're going to go in for a short commercial break. But when we come back, I want him to break down just a bit of you know, for some common person down there, because there's a lot of people, Ugandans at that, and just across the region who don't really understand what the EAC is. They have had the papers, they have had on TVs, there's EAC. We see a lot of the word and promises and here and there, but we do not actually feel this African community. So I want to understand his position on how can we make it just get down to the people, that Ugandans as a particular Uganda, someone deep down, feels the importance of the EAC as a region to themselves, and you know, how they can actually contribute to the whole process of making sure that they benefit. Now, that is what we're going to discuss in the second hour, but we're also going to look at this whole elephant in the room, the ECOP, and what he thinks, what his position is on that particular issue. But it's also because it's a specialty for another gentleman who's our other panelist, Dickens Kamicha, to also tell us what are the implications for one, the region as a whole, but also a country as one. Let's go in for a short commercial break.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hello, beautiful people. You're welcome to the Snap Talk with your girl Teddy Tenjo. Every Saturday, right from 6 to 7.
It is your responsibility omwana wo kubeera mu nnyumba nga teyasuze bweru mbo bamubanja rent. Koyo okulaba abalenzi abo abasajja abakunga. Butuufu tebabuulirirwa nga baabulamu.
Towerabira nti tuli wano ku the Alternative Dig Talk. Mukwano gwange gwali topic kiri wandyagadde twogereko. Is it about family?
You can take your time, look for a job, stabilize, men will come. Men will always be there, you will get the men. Bonna gwoyagala musajja yenna gwoyagala ojja mufuna.
Embaga keetuuke. Bino bintu byasenga nawe ojja bafuna.
Naye ng'oli asitudde ttu yakedde ku makyabaga nti nsitudde ttu. Naye nga mu butuufu agambye nti gy'akyali muto.
Is it outside family? Is it society? Oh, could it be relationships? Just be commenting nga topic yonna gyandyagadde twogereko tujjako tujogera kwano ku the Alternative Dig Talk ku share enganzi the Snap Talk. How are you beautiful Ugandans? It's your girl Teddy Tenjo. Welcome to the fancy floor. Who doesn't see my hair, guys? I am super glamorous. Remember, this is the only show where we're going to be talking about fashion.
Please, where are you think? Teaching.
What has been confusing you about fashion? Sorry, you said I should not smile. For all the information about fashion, maintenance of body shape.
I can wear bling bling when I'm going out. So you can wear bling bling going out or any occasion.
We shall be doing all this in the fancy floor. Remember, it airs every Thursday right from 8:30 to 9 with your girl Teddy Tenjo. It is the fancy floor.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back to the Hotline Show. My name again is Roger Sturiabwe, and in studio today I have Honorable Bukyana Julius, who is vying for the seat at the East African Legislative Assembly, and he's been telling us really what his position has been, what he thinks should be made better, what he thinks if he's going to be given an opportunity, Uganda should be expecting from him. But also we have a gentleman who's joining us online, Mr. Dickens Kamugisha, is going to be telling us also the whole elephant in the room, the ECOP. He's a governance specialist, an energy governance specialist, and so I want to believe that this stands in his docket. Now I'm going to begin with him particularly. Mr. Dickens, we have an issue of this East African crude oil pipeline, highlighting the East African. So that means it's for a region also as much as it is for Uganda. And we have seen the European Union giving its resolution on the violations that have happened, especially of human rights and also the environmental concerns. You as an expert in the energy governance, what do you think about this whole project as one, but also what implications does it have on the people of the region as East Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think first and foremost, we need to appreciate, and all our viewers and listeners out there need to appreciate that the issues raised in the resolution by the EU Parliament are not new, but they are very, very critical for the people of East Africa and for the people of Uganda. And those who may not know this project very well, the ECO project is going to be a pipeline transporting crude from Uganda and the oil fields which are going to provide for the crude. They are located in the Albert region, where we have almost 70% of our protected areas, including lakes, rivers, forests, national parks, wetlands. So anything that happens to those critical areas or critical resources definitely is a concern of very many people and many countries, not only Uganda, but the East African region at large and beyond, because you have River Nile, which would be crossed by the feeder pipeline that would be bringing oil from the fields to the reservoir in Hoima, where the ECOP would be picking its crude if it is constructed. You have Lake Albert, where millions of cubic meters of water would be drawn to the central processing facilities. So anything that happens to Lake Albert, it means it affects DRC, affects the countries that feed on the Nile River. So it would impact very many people. You also have the ECOP passing via the basin or the catchment area of Lake Victoria. And Lake Victoria is not just a lake that is confined to Uganda. It is a lake that benefits millions of you East Africans. So these are fundamental things that need to be appreciated in as far as the ECOP and the other projects in Uganda are concerned. So when you come to the EU resolution, I think they were very, very clear and very specific. They talked about the issues of human rights, especially for communities that are affected. If you recall, in 2012, that the oil activities displaced 7,000 people, including 3,500 women. Those people who were displaced from Kabale in Hoima to give away space for the refinery, there are still some filed cases in court in 2014. They are still in court. They haven't gotten justice. But most important for the ECOP is that area where they were displaced, it is where they are going to build the central reservoir where oil collected from the oil fields will be stored so that they pick some crude for the ECOP. So when the EU, you need to respect the community rights. I don't think that you need to look at the EU because they are outside Uganda or outside East Africa to look at what are they saying, what is the content that is contained in their resolution, because there are many messages. If you've been following the ECOP, 20 over 3,000 households were told not to use their land for long-term developments along the ECOP route. Up to now, those people haven't been compensated. And yet we know in Uganda, almost everyone survives on land. So when something happens to your land, you definitely suffer. And you'll find whether they are families, they are suffering many, many impacts. The EU also talked about environmental impacts. And I saw NEMA saying they have done the social and environmental impact assessment. And so we should feel at home that there will be no impact. But I think you and me, you know, in Uganda here, we've almost the forest, the wetlands are being decimated. Institutions like NEMA, like NFA are actually there watching. Some of the issues are beyond their means. Even where you have laws, you have the policies, they are not working because the political environment, disrespect of the rule of law, is actually causing trouble. So when NEMA to assure people that they are now in charge, it is very, very difficult. For some of us who have been working on this oil, trying to ensure that oil activities do not degrade, do not damage the environment. Right now, we've been fighting with land grabbers who are destroying a forest called Bugoma Forest, which is 41,000 hectares. And this is one of the few forests, remaining tropical forests in this country. Ministry of Lands issued a title for 22 square miles to private people. And these people, they are using those to destroy the environment. So how can you expect Ugandans to be confident, to have trust that our institutions are going to manage a huge project like the ECO to protect our environment, to protect Lake Victoria. And Lake Victoria, as I said, it is not just a Ugandan lake, it is a lake for East Africa, it is a lake for the world, because it is the source of the Nile. So anything that happens on that lake does not only affect East Africa, but also affects all those 11 countries that of the Nile basin. It goes into Mediterranean Sea. So if it happens there, this country would be in real danger, would have to compensate some of those people who are going to be affected, or countries that will be affected. The EU was also talking about the governance, because for these projects actually to benefit Ugandans and the region, you must ensure there is clear systems, clear institutions. There is respect for laws, there is respect for policies, the implementation is clear, the enforcement is clear, compliance is guaranteed. If those ones are not there, don't expect that things are going to go on well. As we speak today, organizations from Kenya, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda filed a case in the East African Court of Justice in 2020. And we have presented real evidence in court, and what we are asking court to do is to determine our case and ensure we get justice. And unfortunately, it is now 2022. We even don't have a date set for the hearing of that case. But you have these institutions, you have the government, you have the companies, including Total from those developed countries. They are moving forward, making decisions as this does not mean anything. And yet the case is challenging the legality of the project itself, is presenting about the dangers that are likely to be caused the project if it is allowed to proceed. And we've been wondering, why can't they first allow this case to be determined and then they are able to make decisions? What happens if the case is won and the court says the project either you have to adjust or you have to be? What will happen to the money that they are putting in some of these things? So I believe that, as a region, East African region, as a country, we need to listen. We need to engage when some of the stakeholders are making these decisions. In any case, we all know that the ECOP right now requires around $5.2 billion. And all this money is going to have, not in Uganda, not in East Africa, but outside East Africa. When Uganda gets so much that it cannot pay its debts, it will even not be able to pay for its obligations to the East African region. It will also not be able to sustain its institutions. So it is in the best interest of the region as a whole to ensure that the member states make decisions that are very well thought out, so that whatever happens, actually, we are able to move forward. And I think my last comment here is that we should not look at whether someone who is making a point or who is coming with a decision is white, black, or red. What we need is to look at the content of what that person is saying. For example, you cannot claim to be sovereign if you are going to borrow 100% of the money to be invested in a project. The other people who are lending you money definitely will have an interest. And when they are trying to say something, I think you need to be humble, you need to be polite to listen. The East African region, I would believe that, it is very, very important for these huge projects that are originating from Uganda to be discussed even at the regional level, and to ensure that, where you have a project where Tanzania has interest, I think the government of Uganda is negotiating with other East African members to also have interest in these projects. We need to discuss them and ensure that first we look at the benefits, but also we look at the dangers that are likely to be caused by such projects. I think that should be the contribution of the region. Otherwise, if we say only the country should look at those dangers, and yet the implications like the issues of climate change, because that was also mentioned by that this is the time when we have clear evidence that like you actually are the biggest causes of climate change, and you want to begin these projects, these new projects that are responsible for the dangers, and we are already suffering huge impacts of climate change, and climate change has no borders. So I believe that as a region, we have to discuss these issues, we have to listen, we have to engage, and through those engagements, then we can make the right decisions.
To understand your position, because as Uganda faces this whole issue of ECOP, which is also a regional issue, I have not really heard the East African community as a whole openly come out to state its position. As an individual, at least I've not seen that. So do you think the East African community has some way it informs the decisions that member states makes? Because, you know, if for an issue such as this, for the EU to be able to come and comment about it, I think the East African region should have been in position to say something about it. And we have seen this same problem with especially the African Union. A lot of issues will be happening across Africa, and the AU will be keeping silent. Do you think the East African community can be useful in that position to be able to inform what decisions sometimes each of these member states make?
Of course, I believe that the East African community needs to show that actually they are relevant and they are useful. And unfortunately, of course, some of these institutions, first you find the East African community itself depends on grants from outside Africa. So normally we depend on those grants. Somehow you get affected in the way you make decisions. Some of the business plans that you've set up, you don't implement them the way they should be implemented. But I believe a project like the ECOP, it needs to have the East African community an interest at different levels. Even the reason why we filed the case in the East African Court of Justice, we saw that actually most of us, if you look at the East African Community Act or treaty, it actually clearly provides on how critical or transborder resources should be managed by the community. And you are going to have this pipeline cutting across borders, Uganda, Tanzania border, going through the water basin or the catchment area of Lake Victoria, which is shared by the different countries in the region. Then when you don't see East African community as a community actually having interest and discussing these critical issues, then you know the community has a problem. For us to wait for the EU to be the ones to come up with resolutions, we are almost failing to do what we are supposed to do. And it is not good in terms of how we can achieve the best or maximize the benefits from some of these decisions. So I would think that, you know, whether it is the East African Parliament, whether it is the Secretary General of East African Community, needs to mobilize the members, needs to mobilize the citizens of the community to ensure that all of them have an interest, all of them discuss these issues. If there are some issues from outside, let's not just try to despise, try to abuse them. Let's see what is in those decisions or those proposals that we can discuss and learn from them. If you are going to borrow money for a project, you must listen to those who are going to give you those monies. And the states that are going to be indebted because of those projects are going to become a liability if they are not well managed to the community. So that's why I believe the community needs to be involved, needs to discuss these issues, and even the states themselves, like Uganda, it needs to see how they can bring the East African members, other members on board and have a good discussion and ensure that some of the areas that can be managed by the region beyond the national borders should be managed. Those which can be managed from outside, especially the funds for investing in the ECOP and the other associated oil projects in Uganda, I don't think the East African community or even the African Union can actually provide these funds. We don't have the funds. We have to borrow them. But we need good terms and conditions for borrowing these monies if we are to proceed. And I believe Uganda as one member or one as a country may not have that capability to ensure that when they are negotiating a loan of $5 billion US dollars, they are going to ensure the terms and conditions are enough to protect ourselves, but also to make a decision that these are projects that are world over, or the world is saying these are dangerous projects in terms of climate change. Instead of investing in these projects, let's go and invest in better projects that actually are not going to cause problems of climate change, and we invest in those where we have an advantage. I know in South Africa, if you invest, for example, in solar, you can have each and every household within the next few years have actually enough energy to use. So those are some of the critical decisions that we can look at as a community. But first and foremost, beginning with the member states and then to the community or to the region, and make the right decisions that can take us forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dickens Kamugisha, for your views. Now I'm going to come back to Honorable Julius Bukyana, and I want to pose the same question that the gentleman answered last about this whole process of the East African crude oil pipeline and the European Union resolution on the same. We have literally not had so much East African community pronounce itself on the position. What does that mean? Anyway, to begin with.
Before you stretch to the East African community, have you had any statement from Tanzania?
Not particularly, and especially because it's also at the center of
Yes.
ECOP and party.
Exactly. So I believe that there is need to have the background discussions first before you throw out to the public, because this 1,443 kilometer pipeline is going to be the largest in the whole of Africa and the world at
If not
large.
the world, yes.
Excuse me. So I believe there is time for us to first sit down, have the background discussions, then we can bring them in the crowd. Because the employment opportunity is going to be in this pipeline. Almost 150,000 employment opportunities. It is not a joke. The EU is looking at, they're giving pertinent reasons. They're giving pertinent reasons. Human rights violation, talk about the climate, the ecosystems and everything. But you cannot stop a project which has already kickstarted. Today, the Total rig has been taken to Kingfisher to be installed. And huge sums of billions of money have been installed. So you cannot just stop out of the blue. Calling for 1 year stalemate for that project means thousands and thousands of people are going to lose jobs. Engineers are going to lose jobs. People who have been certified are going to lose jobs. So I believe there is need for them to just let the project continue as they enforce some resolutions right here. But again, you remember very well when our president made a tweet. It is very, very important. I want to say thumbs up for our president, because giving confidence to the people that however much these resolutions have come, we shall continue. And we expect our oil by 2025. I've heard Mr. Kamugisha say that we need to be humble because they're the funders. Yes, they are the funders. But if your dad is slapping you for no reason, even if the reason is there, was a slap necessary? Couldn't there be other means of you enforcing discipline in me? I used to tell my teachers at school, you're not going to cane me, because can't you use other means? Can't you suspend me? Why would you have to cane me?
Either way, it affects
Yes,
you.
it affects me either way. So was the resolution put forward for the stalemate of the project for 1 year really the best way to pass the resolution?
What do you think should have been done?
Come on ground. Because if you remember the map that they released, I was talking to Peter Mulisa of UNOC. He was telling me even the rivers they pronounced on that document are not even in East Africa. I can assure you that. He said there are only 3 rivers where the pipeline is going to pass.
Going through, yes.
And they have technology which is going to be put inside the pipe that any leakage is detected in a second. So I believe that like the Deputy Speaker Thomas Tayebwa said, that this is racism and neocolonialism. It is quite unfortunate that the same company, Total Energies, which is going to extract the crude oil here, has received a huge $1 billion contract in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And the same project, by the way, because it's an expansion and extraction. expansion and extraction of oil in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So I believe that we are waiting also for the resolution in that capacity.
I assume.
If we don't see it, then we shall know these guys are are using a lion to attack a sheep, because they know a sheep will not fight. But they've found a sheep which is already hungry, and it will fight back this time round. So I believe that our president gave us the confidence, and I believe that come 2025, every Ugandan will have to test on the benefit of this oil. Because
on that particular issue, what is your faith in especially the proceeds of this whole project? We have had a problem before, which actually still, I've not seen them myself, but I think we do have gold around Uganda, yes? And it is extracted day and night. As a country, I don't think we have felt the proceeds of oil as it is. And so some people's argument has been, the reason why the project should actually stop is not because it has environmental impacts and all that violations, but because the proceeds will usually benefit very few people.
now,
And that is a fact that I wouldn't say that I would not verify as an individual, but it's something that has been said over time. Now, what is your position on that particular issue of the country, because of bad governance, which is an issue we cannot just overlook, is affecting how we do benefit from this? Because the EU has good concerns. We do not know how genuine their intentions are, but that is a question of another day. Don't you think they actually have good reasons to stop it?
Before your dad tells you that I need a first grade here, you need to tell him you need to take me to a good school. You cannot say I'm studying in Chebonduko to secondary school and you expect me to come out with 8 It could be a very huge miracle.
Please explain the problem.
Let's have Uganda focus on the oil. Then we can look at the management. Before even we extract the first drop, we're looking at the management.
But exactly, because before we extract, I think the management is very important. Because
it is very important, but we have not even gotten a single.
And we have had scarcity contracts that people literally do not understand.
Do you know why of late many men do not want to wed women?
No. Why?
Because they first want to see the child. Can you give birth?
They want to test first.
Can you give birth? Actually, they have a saying, you cannot buy a car which you have not tested. Self-driven. So I believe let's give this government a chance.
But here is the problem, Honorable Bukyana, is this. Because there is history to that. We have seen mismanagement on a grand scale. It's not something that is new. Ugandans are not standing out of the blue to say, look, this project is most likely not going to benefit us as a country. Yes? And so I think as an individual, don't you think it is very important for us to first address the governance questions before we extract? Because if we don't have transparency...
Are the governance systems there? Do we have SINOC?
We do have SINOC.
Which is partially a member to the governance of this oil. It is a private entity.
It is.
Do we have UNOC, which is Ugandan-based, having 8% of the interest into this oil? Do we have Total Energies, which signed a contract with Uganda? All these companies cannot defraud this country.
Honorable Bukyana,
we have the Petroleum Authority, which is going to be actually a foreseer and a management initiative on this oil. So I believe, of course they say one tomato can spoil the whole basket, but I believe that Nabanja, who is the CEO of the Uganda National Oil Company, with high integrity that I've seen her all the years on other positions, I don't think that mistake can be done. But I believe that, yes, mistakes can be done, and mistakes are too human. But the management of this oil, every country is waiting to see how Uganda is going to perform this oil. I can tell you. And this oil has come as a blessing to Uganda. It is not just in every country. Have you had oil being extracted in Kenya?
No, you have not.
Have you had it in Tanzania?
I have had it in other countries in Africa. It has happened, especially in Nigeria. And it was the cause of literally the instability.
Thank you.
Some people
so they are waiting to see how Uganda is going to manage this oil. But nonetheless, let's give them a chance, because this is a precious product that we are selling out. This crude oil pipeline coming from Kabale in Hoima, going straight to Tanga in Tanzania, we're going to receive a lot of criticism, because this is a product that is not in every country. And they believe Uganda is too small to have it. So they say the devil will come in the later days. These are the things we're receiving, yes. And I'm telling you, the EU is just starting. It is just starting. You'll even see sanctions on other projects because they want to use those projects to sabotage the oil project. But remember when the contract was given, before the contract was given to Total Energies, there were so many companies which had made bids to have the extraction of oil. The Tula Oil, there was another company from Germany, and then Total Energies. So many companies which were capable. And President said, if Total Energies convinced me to come to this oil, if they fail, I have an option. But the worst bit of it is, excuse me, the worst bit of it is that Total Energies is coming from is being threatened by the EU. They're saying, you please.
Because they come from an EU country.
Thank you. So you might pick another company which comes from the same block, and it's like you've moved away from the frying pan to the fire. So I believe that there is need to harmonize on both sides to see how best we can handle this project, because this product is going to sell Uganda, is going to increase Uganda's GDP to a level where we never thought we are. Our infrastructure has been improved. If you go to Kabale, I mean, if you go to Hoima, the airport constructed right there, the roads, many people who used to sell their plots 50 by 100, the amounts have increased because it is accessible. The roads are nearer, services are going there, hospitals, schools are being constructed. I mean, let's not just throw this project to the dogs, but I want to appreciate that this ECOP is going to be for the betterment of this country.
That is true. To some extent, I have myself felt, because we are literally at the crossroads of which one is a lesser evil. Do we go with the national growth at the extent of the environmental implications, or do we go with environment and abandon the national growth that comes with the extraction of oil? But do you think we have a governance problem?
On what?
On especially handling those particular projects.
I don't think there's a governance problem. The problem is this project is new. I was seeing how the national suppliers database, how people are supposed to apply for bids. Cleaning, stationery,
there's 1,000 of those.
Thousands of companies, but they went through a bidding process. This is a product which is new to Ugandans, and how it is going to be handled, according to, even welders were trained by the American Welders Association. You were supposed to receive a certificate of training for you to go and apply for a job to be a welder in this project. So the way we are handling it is it's a new baby. And Ugandans must appreciate that this oil, after its extraction, you will see more people getting out of this country as expatriates. If oil is discovered in Kenya, they will be benchmarking on Uganda on management, on handling, on extraction, because we are now on a stage where we are consultants. I'm telling you this. The management cannot be judged right now because we have not even gotten to 60% of the management. I'm telling you this. The EACOP itself is now turned Ugandan. The ECO project is turned Ugandan. And you may find that the management team is not even 80% or 60% full. The financing is becoming a problem. The funding is becoming a problem. And the sanctions are now coming. So I believe the management problem for this project is just smear politics and propaganda. We need to give them chance. This is a new project. This is a baby on the block. We need to treasure this product, because if we do not, other countries are just laughing at us. And this is our very own goal that we have now. Companies that have really gotten these deals treasure such deals, and we, the owners, are just fighting. So I believe that today I want to appreciate the Forum for Democratic Change. They have come out and appreciated that the EU sanctions were not in place for this project. They are in conjunction with the government. We should continue with this. But the other political party from Kamocha was just siding with the EU. Very, very unfortunate, because even if they were the ones coming in power, they needed this project. They need this project. So if you're assuming you're going to come in power after 2026 and you killed this project, how are you going to man the country? You need to be in conjunction with the people. You need to understand that, yes, this is a new product and management is just growing for it. Many people have been trained in oil and gas outside this country just to manage this product. And if we just throw it to the dogs, I believe that we are throwing ourselves to the poverty that we did not know we will have even in the next 2 years.
We have a very major percentage that we are getting from this oil as a country. Someone out there will wonder how much is in it for Uganda as a country. How much is in it?
This project is, if I'm not
The
mis-
lion's share is going to Total.
Yes,
That is
yes.
a foreign country. Oil is here. Someone wants.
If I remember very well,
this.
this is a $43 trillion project. Either 43 or 45. Mr. Kamjisha can give us corrections right there. Either 43 or $45 trillion project. But UNOC has 8% of the shares. 8% of the shares. And I think CNOC has 15% and Total Energies takes the rest. But Mr. Kamjisha can give us more information about that. But what I believe is the management of this oil, what UNOC is going to be doing is to manage the oil. That's why it's taking 8%. Management of the oil. The sale and everything, the profits and all that. Because the extraction itself, Total is putting in money. Is putting in money to bring the rigs, to bring the expatriates, to bring to do the procurement and everything. So their lion's share is there because they have put in a lot. Thank you.
I think now I go to the gentleman, Dickens Kamjisha. I want to understand your position. Honorable Julius says that, look, as a country, we actually do need this project, irrespective of whether, of what might be the consequences that obviously will come around, because literally we'll have to make sacrifices either way. Whether we decide to take it or not, there are sacrifices to be made on either sides. I want to get your position on what do you think about this oil as one to the country, especially given the percentage that, as meager as it is, the country is getting.
I think thanks very much, and I think maybe the position of Julius is a position that is always common in Africa. When especially developing countries discover resources like these ones, we normally get very much excited, and we can actually ignore all other indicators that show we are likely to get problems. I think maybe, Julius, as you plan to go to the Yara, one of the things that you need to be looking at is Africa and oil. These influences by the West will definitely not stop, and it is not in their best interest to stop, but it must be us as the developing countries to ensure that we don't allow that influence. And unfortunately, it is still very, very maybe difficult for us to avoid their influence. This is why where even the East African community is funded by the West. You find the African Union funded by the West. This is the reason why you'll find in the entire Africa countries that are producing oil. Don't think that you can say you feel proud that countries have produced oil and so they are better than us. And the biggest issue is the question of governance. I really want to beg to disagree with you that we can proceed with these huge projects and then address the question of governance later. If you are going to negotiating, for example, projects like the ECOP, which is going to be around $5.2 billion US dollars, that is around 19 trillion Uganda shillings. You are negotiating the Terenga, which is going to be developed costing around $2 billion US dollars. Kingfisher also costing around $2 billion US dollars. As you said, over 45 trillion Uganda shillings investing in this project to start producing. And you have people who are corrupt. You have weak institutions that are going to negotiate. You have weak institutions that are going to negotiate the loans or even negotiate with the companies. I can assure you, even if you build the pipeline, even if you do all the oil things that you want, you will get in more problems, even poorer. Countries like Nigeria today, which have been producing oil for the last 60 years, they have the richest person in Africa, and they are the biggest economy in Africa. But the same country has the poorest person on earth. And this is a record by both Nigeria and the World Bank, that Nigeria has the poorest people on earth. And yet they also have the richest people in Africa. So in other words, when you don't have governance, I can assure you, the communities that I mentioned, which are being displaced, denied the right to use their land, they will actually lose the little they have. Then those people who are engaging with companies, they can get their kickbacks and they will become very rich. And so those ones will be saying, we've enjoyed and we should know. But I think right now, I would think that the fact that we are going to borrow this money, we need to make sure our house is in order. And today we don't have a house that is in order. I can use like an example because someone can say oil is new here. We've been working on issues of electricity. When it was being negotiated, we insisted, we worked with journalists to go to court to demand for the power purchase agreements, the agreement for that dam. Up to now, they refuse to share it. But have you been seeing what is happening? A dam that was supposed to give us electricity at 5 cents US dollars. Today, it is giving us electricity at over 13 cents US dollars. Government of Uganda is borrowing more money to buy down the tariff. The company, the Bukyana Energy Limited, that is managing that dam, is exempted from taxes. In 2018, 24% of Ugandans had access to electricity. Today, in 2022, the Uganda Bureau of Statistics is indicating that only 19% now has access to electricity. In other words, access has reduced from 24% to the current 19%. In 2012, 2013, when they were negotiating contracts for Isimba Dam and the Karuma Dam, we again insisted that those power purchase agreements should be in the public. We even did whistleblowing saying that those companies didn't have the competence. As we speak, Isimba Dam is struggling. Karuma has opened, commissioned because of defects. So for me, I believe that when you talk about governance and you say you can proceed with oil without governance, you are actually almost falling into fire. And there is no country on earth that can succeed with oil without ensuring that they have the right institutions and the leaders are actually committed, working for the common good, working for the bigger good, working for the bigger picture. Those ones, we still have problems. Of course, some people are saying, no, jobs. I can assure you, oil industry does not create jobs. Oil can generate revenues, and then you use those revenues to create opportunities elsewhere. But in terms of jobs, you are talking about 150,000 jobs. Those will be in 1 or 2 years, the job casual workers who are digging the trenches where they are going to put a pipeline. But if someone is going to gain more skills, going to be paid the money that he or she can transform his or her family, or himself or herself, there are no jobs that you are going to talk about. But if you are going to do these oil activities, for example, draw oil from natural forests, from around the Karbat, go to the pipeline, and you damage some of those critical areas that have been sustaining our tourism sector, that have been sustaining our weather, to ensure that people can still depend on nature in terms of rains and the seasons. If you are not going to ensure that you have systems that can protect that critical biodiversity, critical environment, and you damage it in the process of you saying you are pursuing oil and that you want to get money from oil, then you will get problems, I can assure you, because at least it is not like something we are talking about what happened. It has been happening in Africa, and we know why it has been happening. If we look at our record since 2006 when we discovered oil, in 2015, we had the companies that had bidded and had been selected to build the refinery. What happened? And we spent huge discussions. All those things did not take place, not because of EU resolutions. In 2012, Noka and Total bought shares from Taro at 2.9 billion US dollars, and URA had assessed a tax of 470 million. I tell you, we lost around 157 million US dollars, and the minister for energy then said she had signed a tax exemption in the agreement because she had not read the agreement. We didn't see that minister actually being sanctioned. Up to now, the person is just there moving around. So it's not about the EU resolutions. It's about how we organize ourselves. And we need to organize if we are talking about, we want to talk about oil. Moving into the oil exploitation without a country being strong, I can assure you, whether the EU says anything or not, I don't know whether Ugandans wanted the EU to keep quiet on these fundamental things. We've been talking about our civil society organizations. We've been talking about human rights. We've been talking about environmental rights. We've been talking about access to justice. We've been talking about institutions that are weak, which are allowing our critical biodiversity to get destroyed or degraded. So I don't think the EU was saying anything that was new, but I believe these are very, very critical and we need to give them attention. If we don't, and we say, let's just go for oil. In any case today, by the way, if you look at from 2012 when Sinok and Total came here, almost 60% of our national debt, which is over 20 billion US dollars in debt, we've borrowed that money during that time. And this is a characteristic of all developing countries that discover oil. The moment they discover oil, they start borrowing left and right. By the time they actually start negotiating contracts to exploit oil, they are in a bad shape. In other words, they are at a disadvantage because there is no country that will be suffering from huge debts and will have capacity to negotiate good deals. Instead, you will have these companies from wherever they come from, and they will come and take you for a ride. So you will start producing, but at a disadvantage because the terms and conditions are very critical. And it's not that we are going to start producing oil today. The decisions that we've been making almost since 2006, when we discovered oil, are going to determine whether we succeed with our oil or we actually fail. And there are many decisions that we have so far made, including the recent Special Provisions Bill or law, which actually gives powers and huge rights to the ECOP company, to the extent that they can even open their headquarters outside. To the extent that actually we as citizens were asked to make comments on that bill without actually looking at the arguments. And yet the bill was saying they wanted to effect the implementation of the arguments. How did the government expect us to comment on the bill when we had no access to the arguments? And you want Ugandans to believe that they are going to benefit when most of the key political arguments are being hidden away from them. It becomes very difficult.
Mr. Dickens, just a second, sir. I want to understand that as a country, as a state, Uganda, as we stand, and given our economic standing and all that, it is the people who are going forward with and who are advocating for the continuation of the extraction is because there could be something we can benefit. Do you think there's a way that we can address some of these issues that are being raised in the EU resolution and still continue with the project? Because as a country, third world as it is, and our economy as it stands right now, I feel like we could use every dime that we can find. So what do you think? Is that possible? Is that a way we can go?
I'm actually yet to be convinced that at the moment, the way the people who are supposed to actually finance these projects are already actually showing their negativity, that we are going to go to them, they give us funds on terms and conditions that are fair, and we are able to build the infrastructure and actually generate revenues that are going to create benefits for our people. It is extremely very difficult. The conditions today, when the world is actually saying we must stop exploitation, you can have this situation of Russia-Ukraine, which is creating a crisis that even the countries that are telling us not to exploit oil, they are trying to open new fields because they have been actually shocked. But All in all is that the global community, and even including companies like Total, they are closing fields in Nigeria, in Angola, and other countries, going away because somehow they are trying to shift from fossil fuels. So those who will be trying to come to our countries will be coming and will give us loans and resource capital on bad terms. And those bad terms will definitely not allow us to benefit. But if you consider that all those factors, maybe we can manage them, the ones from outside. Now, for us to even talk about benefits, we must ensure that our governance is good. And not because me, when I talk about governance, I'm talking about the quality institutions. If the institutions, whether they are institutions, whether they are regulatory institutions, whether they are environmental institutions, we need to ensure they have the capacity to deliver their mandates. We need to ensure the leaders are responsible or they are held accountable to citizens. Those who are going to negotiate on our behalf, whether they are implementing the laws, whether they are negotiating the loans, whether they are overseeing what is the companies are doing, they must know that citizens are watching, and the citizens should have capacity to sanction some of those leaders. For me, that's when we can say maybe those can take us somewhere. The third issue that I need to see is our judiciary, the judicial system. There is no country, I think, in the world that can succeed with these huge projects if the judiciary is not capable of delivering justice fairly and impartially. Because if you have, for example, Sinohydro that has been building Karuma Dam, that is a sector, if you use it as an example, and for 4 years, since 2019, when they were supposed to commission, they can't commission it because they are down. When you have like China Water that has built Simba, and in a very short time they are telling us the dam is collapsing because of defects, and you can't even say let's take them to court and they pay damages and the like, then you will end up with ghost projects, and ghost projects are not in a country. You would rather not proceed with such projects. If you are going to have the Bujagari, which is producing electricity that is too expensive, that even me and you who are working, we cannot use that electricity because we can't afford. But that electricity, you find the government putting in money to extend it to the villages, that it is going to be that electricity to help people move away from cutting down the forest. It can't happen. I would imagine if there is a strong judiciary, we should be able to even take those companies to court to pay for the suffering we are going through. So those are some of the areas where you find as a country, you must organize. You must ensure that you are strong. If you are not strong, it will not whether the EU makes a resolution or not, whether you call them colonialists, imperialists, it will not help, because at the end of the day, they have a huge stake, they have the money, the companies are from their place, that is going to be used is from their place. So the technology going to be used is from their place. So simply for you to call them something that is not palatable, you are actually causing more problem for yourself, because you need them by your means.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Dickens. I'm going to get back a little bit later to you for your parting shots, but before, I want to hear Honorable. Time is fast running out, and so I want to get your parting shots. But also, as you give us your parting shots, I want you to give us a way that we can make the East African community reach the people down. Because there's a lot of us, there's a lot of people we hear East African community, we hear it's a regional bloc, and that is it. That's about it. We don't really feel it deep down. I cannot go home now and sit with my father and tell him, look, the East African community has signed this and that law, and this is how we're going to benefit. How do you think we can make the East African community reach the ground to every single person?
That's a huge task, but I would say it can be softened if the people we send there really want the EAC to reach the people. First of all, as a symposiums, trade symposiums. We can create trade symposiums to enlighten our traders on what is done and which policies are favoring their trade between these countries. Because we have investors who have only encircled themselves in Uganda. They do not know, they do not know about the trade opportunities outside Uganda, and yet they could make more huge sums of money outside Uganda.
And the same goes for the other ones.
Exactly. They can also come here because we are calling upon investors from the US, from Abu Dhabi, from Dubai, but we have investors who are in East Africa. Can we first have East Africa for East Africans?
The local investors.
Before we do the foreign investment indicators and everything, can we have East African investors put together and be told, you know what, you can put up maybe a factory in Uganda and the subsidy is ABCD. Let them know about what is happening in Kenya. Ugandan traders, let them have a trip facilitated by the Minister of ESC to go and have what it takes to benchmark on Kenya, bring it here, and also Kenyans come here and benchmark what is in Uganda. I want to believe that after trade symposiums, we can also have the community symposiums, a one-on-one with them. Mostly the communities that are living on the coasts, on the borders of these countries. Do they know that trade can flourish very well if you just learn a few things of what are supposed to be done? The documentation, the lifestyle, the goods to take that side. All that it takes for you to trade on cross-border trade. But many of our people take it to be, you see, if you have an MP who doesn't even attend burials, who doesn't even come for people's weddings and quandulas, then I don't know what you chose. So I believe because their work is legislation, but the people who voted for you must also feel your presence in the constituency. That is the same with the ESC, ELA officers. They are supposed to be felt in the country. Why Mr. Mukasambide was being felt here is because of his English. Even if some of us did not understand it, but clips would be cut and they would be distributed on social media, and you would find people saying hula balu, you know, kwagamaya, and yes, political gambodism, and that was his trademark. He made sure he flourishes in ESC because he submitted on the floor with his weird English, however much we did not know it, but he submitted. How many did you see?
He represented.
How many people did you see trade on social media? So I believe that we need to stretch the ball a little bit higher. Let's play at the game of convenience to our people. When we come, because they only legislate for 2 weeks in a quarter. Did you know that? Only 14 days. So, and where are they? The other days, they're in committees, yes, but when they come back here, what do?
We don't fill them.
So I believe there is need to stretch the agenda a little bit higher, to have people who understand, who have ideas. Because these ideas, I'm telling you, are the ones in my manifesto.
Conclude,
I'm telling
Mr.
you.
Bukyana.
So I want to thank everybody who's been watching us on Alternative UG Facebook page. And I want to ask the members of parliament that this is the time that you have to send somebody who is really zealous about the ESC. We shall not just take people. I believe that if it's me or not, we shall not just take people who are going to take teas and sit in acid halls and be driven in Porsche cars and fly in first class and just come back and tell us sweet nothings right here. We need action-oriented members of parliament to go and represent us in ELA. And of course, I would suggest that if you're ticking, the 9 members, include Julius Bukyana. You will not regret, by the way. You will not regret. So I believe this is the time for us to send a credible person, and that credible person is none other than Julius Bukyana. Have yourselves a good night, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Bukyana. We have 48 hours to decide whether you are actually a honorable, or if you're going to still be like me, who is, back
I'll be a consultant
and enjoying the sun.
I'll not come back to the host.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm going to give just 1 minute to my other panelist to say his concluding remarks, parting short, so we can leave this place.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I think thank you for hosting us. The most important thing that I would want to end with is to call on the community leaders to ensure that the region should be felt by the citizens, and that can only be done through sensitization. I want also to call on the East African leaders and specifically Ugandans and Ugandan leaders to ensure that these projects, like the oil projects, whether it is ECOP, whether it is Petilenga, it needs to be well thought out, and we need to ensure we organize the country in terms of institutions, in terms of laws, in terms of leadership, to ensure that we don't destroy our country. Instead, we make it beneficial for the citizens. That one, we need to do it without fail. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dickens Kamisha, for your time. Thank you so much for the insights you've given us and for the things we have learned from you. Being an expert in energy governance is something that we can tap, from. And Honorable Bukyana, thank you so much for making time and coming here to educate us about the East African community, because I feel like there's too much we can learn from it, but we are probably just not giving it the priority it deserves. So thank you so much. And to our viewers, thank you so much for his keeping it Digitalk and for his following. I thank you particularly because there's too much you also put in, and so it would not be fair to not appreciate your efforts as such. And so my name, I remain Roger Studiahabo. Shout outs to the people who have helped behind the screens, Lily and Lloyd on the camera, the gentleman Arnold Mukosi and Jeremiah in the other side of the, behind that screen. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. And from us all, myself and Digitalk, have yourselves a good night.